Welcome to Small Screen Cinema with Tabitha and Dad. And boy, we put you through a tearjerker last week with Bill. It's it's a double dip into the tears. Tabitha, tell the people the hell you put me through.
All right, this week we are watching The Execution of Private Slovic. Now, I mean, you should have known from the title, it's not going to be a happy movie.
Well, I thought maybe like he was a football player. We need to execute this play to win or something
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
that's what happened. No, this is based on the true story of Eddie Slovic, the first American soldier to be executed for desertion since the Civil War, and I'm pretty sure the last one to date. And this was during World War II. So this telefilm was adapted from the book by William Bradford Huey. According to Wikipedia, Eisenhower, the chief of staff of the army during that time, authorized Slovic's execution and did not want this book to come out. It was adapted for television by Richard Levinson and William Link. You may recognize those names as the creator of Columbo, Mannix, and Murder, She Wrote. Levinson passed away in 1987 at only 52. Link passed away in 2020. Yeah, I know. Levinson and Link read this book when they were in college and remembered it years later when they had some power and influence in the industry. And Link called this his favorite of the movies they worked on. Apparently, Frank Sinatra originally had the rights to this book and was going to produce it, but got a lot of heat about making a movie about an American traitor. He also hired blacklisted screenwriter Dalton Trumbo to write the script. Particularly, good old John Wayne publicly bitched him out for making a communist propaganda story. So his version never came to fruition.
I'm sorry. John Wayne, aside from his racist, ultra right wing politics, he couldn't freaking act either. I said it. I'm John Wayne. I'm going to be Genghis Khan. I'm John Wayne. I'm going to be Rooster Cogburn. I'm going to be in the Fighting Seabees. But you know what? Nothing's going to change because I'm just John Wayne and I can't act my way out of a paper bag.
Well, that's why he did westerns so long. He tried to get out of westerns. His non-westerns weren't making any money. So, back to the well with him.
Yeah, you have a family member who worshipped him.
I know.
Yeah.
We also, from Mondo's grandmother, have a framed photograph of him in our garage.
Oh, sorry, he's an awful human being. And I'm
No,
not
he
sorry
was.
about it. He is an awful human being. To
He
think
was.
that he was a white supremacist.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Um, this movie was directed by Lamont Johnson. Johnson was an actor as well as a director. He directed episodes of Have Gun Will Travel, Peter Gunn, The Twilight Zone, The Name of the Game, and Zane Grey Theater. He actually made the Twilight Zone with oh, what's the episode called? The one with Redford. Nothing in the Dark.
Um, isn't that Mr. Death?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not what the episode's called, but
Well,
yeah,
yeah, but that's what I remember by Mr.
yes.
Death.
He made another high-profile TV movie with Martin Sheen called That Certain Summer. We'll probably get to that one at some point. And he passed away in 2010. And I just realized my closet door is open. Sorry.
You
uh,
know, I would have never noticed it.
well, that's great. So this movie stars Martin Sheen, star of Apocalypse Now, The Badlands, Catch 22, The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, Wall Street, many, many more. Um, he's in a really good movie from the 1960s that I never see mentioned, so I'm gonna shout it out here called The Incident. Check that one out. These days, he's probably best known as one of the gay ex-husbands on Grace and Frankie, or the president from The West Wing. And he is still with us. He's still working. He is still Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez's father. Sheen was nominated for an Emmy for his work in this movie.
Fantastic.
Isn't it? Also
Yes.
stars Ned Beatty. Ned Beatty, who was a very talented actor, he's great in this movie. He was in Network, Superman, Rudy, Mikey and Nikki. He was on Homicide, Life on the Streets, and of course the evil teddy bear in Toy Story 3. But tell me, what's he always going to be remembered for?
Squeal like a pig.
Yeah, he sure is, squealing like a
Or
pig
or
before
Ned
getting assaulted by a bunch of hillbillies.
abilities.
That too. Uh, Ned Beatty passed away in 2021. Also in this film is young Gary Busey before he completely lost the plot. You'll know him from the Buddy Holly story, Lethal Weapon, Point Break, Rookie of the Year, Predator 2, and Silver Bullet. And apparently, in 2014, he won Celebrity Big Brother UK.
Wow.
As you mentioned at the end of last week, in 1988, he was in a very serious motorcycle accident that almost killed him. And yeah, I admit that my whole life I've only known him as that crazy guy who I used to get mixed up with Nick Nolte.
Yeah, Gary Busey was a great actor before the accident. Then he just kind of became a caricature. But
Hmm.
I don't know. Have you seen the Buddy Holly story?
No,
He was nominated for an Oscar, and it's fantastic. He did a great job.
I will check that one out sometime. Gary Busey is still with us. And
Somehow,
finally, physically, he's with us. I don't know where. And finally, we have Mary Claire Costello, who is from Peoria, Illinois. Costello was a long working actress who popped up in some I can't talk tonight. Popped up in some memorable films. Just go on without me.
this is my hillbilly. Bill. I can't even say the. Anyway,
She was in movies like Let's Scare Jessica to Death, Ordinary People, Indecent Proposal, and The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. She also did a lot of work on TV, shows like The Incredible Hulk, Little House on the Prairie, Ironside, and The Waltons. Um, do you uh do you know Alan Arbus? You know, he played the psychologist on MASH. Do you remember
no,
him?
I watched MASH when I was so young. I don't remember a whole lot about it.
Okay, well, there was a psychiatrist who was a recurring character on MASH, and she was married to him. I just thought that was notable. The Execution of Private Slovic aired March 13th, 1974 on NBC. It ran against an episode of Canon on CBS and another TV movie on ABC called The Hanged Man, followed by an episode of a show called Doc Elliot. That show only lasted 15 episodes. So that's our background. Let's get into it. We open with text explaining who Eddie Slovic was, why he was executed, and that maybe you shouldn't let your kids watch this. Then we see a military jeep driving down a snowy road. Two MPs are in the jeep. One of them is reading the SOPs as to how to execute a man by firing squad. The driver tells him to knock it off. He doesn't want to hear this. He doesn't want to talk about what they're about to do. The two deliver the SOPs to a Major Fellman. Before they go, he asks them if there's much talk about the impending execution among the men. Yeah, there is. How do they feel about it? Well, I guess they mostly feel like he's got it coming. So Fellman goes outside to see a post being put up. This is what they're going to tie him to when they shoot him to death. There is a very palpable mood from everyone that they don't want to do this. I mean, they're going to, because they don't really have a choice, but they don't want to. And you and I don't really come from a military family, so this is maybe a little foreign to us, this idea of complete and utter dedication to the military, you know? Meanwhile, the firing squad are being briefed. They're all expert marksmen, and they're told to just aim for the heart. Thanks. Father Stafford, the chaplain, played by Ned Beatty, then addresses the men. He says until the prisoner arrives, some of the men might want to talk to him, and they're reluctant to do so, but eventually says that they all kind of feel bad about it. One of them even went to his CO and tried to get out of the assignment. The CO told him, not unless you want to take his place. Like, Jesus, really? That is unbelievably harsh. He doesn't want to shoot one of their own soldiers. Another man pipes up that, well, Slovic is a deserter. And the first man argues that they've had lots of deserters in this war. None of them have ever been put to death. Father Stafford asks if any of the boys are Catholic. Yeah, a few of them are. He says that none of them made the decision, but they're the ones ordered to carry it out because a higher authority has accepted the moral responsibility. The higher authority, I guess, being Eisenhower. He tells them that they all have nothing to be ashamed of. When they're dismissed, one of them says, Slovic didn't give a damn about any of us being shot up, so why should we feel bad about him? Meanwhile, it happened again. I shouldn't have drank so much before I came in here. Meanwhile, Major Fellman is having a local seamstress make a face hood for the prisoner. And of course, he only speaks English, she
Yeah,
only speaks French.
they're in France, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, they're in France, so this is kind of a tough going. She tries to she conveys that, well, do you want eye holes, right? And he's like, no. And she's kind of a little sus about that, but okay. Back at this makeshift prison, the squad is doing a dry run of the execution. They're doing everything except actually firing. Per the SOPs, one of the men will be given a blank round, but no one will know who, so they can all tell themselves that they had the blank and they didn't kill him. If Slovic isn't dead after the first round, they reload and fire again.
And I think executions that are done today, it's very rare that there's an execution, but South Carolina had one in March, by the way. I think with a firing squad, an execution by firing squad, now it's like 25% of them will have blanks.
Oh,
Um, so it, it it's a psychological ploy to ease their conscience. Like, well, chances were pretty good I had a blank, so I wasn't one of the responsible ones.
okay. Where was I? Fellman and Stafford talk when the soldiers leave, and they say that Slovic is going to be arriving that evening. Stafford says that he's got a lot of letters from his wife. He wants him to have time to read them. The major then shows him a collapse board. It's basically a board they can strap him to if he's, quote, too cowardly to walk out under his own steam. And Stafford is audibly disgusted by this, and Fellman defends himself. He says, look, we don't like it either, but this is what we've been ordered to do. They go off to get some coffee, and Stafford says that they're like Herod and Pilate. That night,
Wait a
oh, go ahead.
minute. There was something that was kind of funny.
What's that?
Ned Beatty's character says, or he says to Ned Beatty's character, looks like we'll be bunking together. And I'm thinking, okay, he's playing a priest in here. That doesn't sound good. And he was in Deliverance. That doesn't, it was just like all these triggers, like, oh, that was a wrong thing to say to Ned Beatty.
You're like, no, Ned Beatty,
Ned, what? I don't do those kind of roles anymore.
no. He's like, no, it's in my contract. You get away from me. That night, we see a Jeep pull up to like this little diner, and it's a couple of MPs driving Eddie. This is when we're introduced to him. They talk about how the snow is delaying them and they probably won't make it until morning. They do allow Eddie to get out of the Jeep and stretch his legs. A stray dog comes up to him and he plays with it for a minute. We find out later he likes animals. Eddie asks the MPs to do him a favor and just let him start running. And they said, if you do that, we'd have to shoot you. He says he knows, but at least it would get it over with. They're like, we can't do that. And I feel like if he were serious about it, he'd just run without asking. But
I,
anyway, they get moving again.
I think that was within his character, though, because we're going to find out through getting to know this is the first time we see him, but as the movie unfolds, you get to know him. he's very conscientious of other people. I mean,
You're right.
even in the most dire circumstances that anyone could ever have in their life, he is always thinking about other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's fair. They get back in the Jeep and they do give Eddie a cigarette. And then we have our first flashbacks. It's a lot of flashbacks in this. It's mostly flashback. Narrated, there's going to be a ton of narrators too. This one is from the warden of his reform school, or I don't know what you call the head of a reform school. He tells us that Eddie was weak as dishwater, but friendly and good-hearted. He was at that school for 3 years. He had had some scrapes with the law, but it was minor stuff. And he was automatically 4F from the army. I mean, he couldn't be drafted, I guess, because he had a criminal record.
I think it was
So we
not
see,
just that he had a criminal record, it's that he had the leg issues when he was a kid. He was bow-legged,
oh yeah,
and
yeah,
had to break his legs and reset them. And at
yeah,
age three, it's like I don't remember it. I'm thinking, well, yeah, your mind probably blocked that out, man. I can
right.
remember stuff when I was three. I remember when I was
Uh,
three and they broke my legs. So
we see Eddie being released from the school, and his sister comes and picks him up. The warden says he doesn't blame the military for shooting him. They were in the middle of war after all, but he could have told them that they could have trained him all they wanted to, but when it came down to it, he was either going to freeze or he was going to run. That's just who he was. Our next narrator is Eddie's wife, Antoinette, and we see the first time she meets him. She's, I guess, friendly with his sister and was kind enough to hook him up with a job with her boss, who's a plumber. She narrates that they fell in love immediately. Eddie makes himself very handy and keeps getting raises, and so we see him working really hard, and there's a shot of him like hanging plungers from the ceiling as decorations, which I thought was kind of funny. Eddie and Antoinette go on a date, and she asks him how he got into trouble. He says that he really just was a petty thief, but he got sent up for embezzlement, which was for $59, which I don't know, I guess is like a grand today. I don't know. But he served 9 months for that, for the petty theft. And after that, when he got out, he and his buddy stole a car and subsequently crashed it. He turned himself in for that one and served 3 years. She asked why he did that, and he said that's just the way it was in his neighborhood. You just did what your friends did. His friends quit school, so he did. Everyone's father was out of work because of the depression. There was just never enough money. I know that my grandma, mom's mom, always ate everything on her plate no matter what, because that's how she was raised to, because she was born in, the middle of the depression. What was I? Yeah, so Eddie tells her that he was born, like you said earlier, bow-legged and had to be operated on when he was 3. Antoinette has a limp, and it turns out she was just born with one leg shorter than the other. So they kind of bond over that. Eddie's walking her home, and she asks if he wants to come in. He says, well, maybe next time. He's being a gentleman, but then he runs up and kisses her and says he's going to marry her and then runs off. It's cute. In the next scene, he's telling his parole officer that he wants to marry Antoinette, and the guy more or less tells him that she's too good for him.
yeah,
He's
thanks.
like, she's older, she's educated, she makes more money, and he's like, I know, isn't it great? So,
I'm hanging plungers from the ceiling. Yeah, I
right?
need this woman.
So the parole officer agrees, but says he has to meet her and approve of her and her background. And he hasn't actually proposed yet, but he's hyped and he's sure she'll say yes. So the couple goes down to the draft board just to make sure that he's still 4F. They ask if his status will change, and the woman tells them it's very unlikely. I mean, maybe it was, but it wasn't impossible, apparently. Eddie says that she should marry him because every other guy is going overseas and he'll be the only one left. And that's a fair point. So we cut to their wedding. Antoinette narrates that she paid $700 for the dress and veil.
I know. Kathy and I were watching, like, my gosh, that's a lot of money today. And I mean, not
Right?
a wedding dress, but for people like us, that's a lot of money for a wedding dress.
Yeah, yeah. She said it was a Polish wedding that lasted for days. Days? Is that a thing?
Kathy,
I've never heard of that. Um, you may notice a child running around in this scene. That is young Charlie Sheen, by the way.
yeah, you could tell because he had a Coke straw sticking out of his 4-year-old nose.
I did right. There's a shot where he's asleep on an older woman's lap, and I'm like, passed out from from all the booze he was.
And then when he wakes up, he's going to say, "Can I have sex with you?"
Oh no!
It's kind of like the movie Twins. Emilio got all the good stuff, and Charlie got all the disgusting stuff. So
There are three others. They're just not famous. I don't know if you know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there are three other Sheen slash Estevez children. So this wedding goes on just short of my lifetime. I swear, it just keeps going and going and going. Finally, they move on. Antoinette narrates that Eddie asked her to make him a success, and she told him that she would. Okay. On that note, I should bring up that he calls her mommy.
Yes, and that, and he must have said it 30 times in this movie, and that's just weird. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. The two of them are at the movies. They're watching newsreels about what's going on overseas in the war, and she said it really wasn't something they worried about. They had their own lives. That was over there. We're here. Whatever. The two of them are in bed when Eddie gets up to go out. She's like, "What are you doing? It's 2:30 in the morning." He's upset because she's pregnant and he can't support them, which I thought was interesting because he calls her mommy and wants her to take care of him, but okay. He wants $5 to go out and have a beer. He goes through her stuff and pulls out 30, and then he bitches that she's got all the money and takes charge of it, and then she said, "Bitch, you told me to take charge of the money because you can't be trusted." So they get into a fight and she starts tearing up the bills, and I'm like, "Oh my God, don't do that." He starts to storm out, but she's pulling him back and crying, and he ends up hugging her and apologizing and says all he wants is a house and a car, and that's not too much to ask, is it? She says they'll get those things. It just takes time. They'll get everything they want eventually. And that's when she realizes, oh, we tore these up. But don't worry, if we have the serial numbers, it's fine, which I didn't know was a thing, but that's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as the serial numbers are intact, bills are good. They can be burned or anything, but serial numbers are intact. You take them to the bank, they switch them out. Because I had to do that when I worked with Hunt Brothers Pizza. Somebody gave me a bunch of bills that had been burned, and he told me it was a store owner. He said they have the serial numbers. I said, "We'll be good." I said, "The bank don't take these. I'm coming back." The bank took them. So
Good. Antoinette tells us that unfortunately she did suffer a miscarriage, but they didn't get too down about it. They were like, we have plenty of time to try again. Eddie gets a new job, a better job, making $1.40 an hour. I guess that's like 20 an hour now. Um, let me see. By their first anniversary, they are able to rent a house and new furniture. He meets his neighbor who starts chatting about the war, and Eddie's barely listening. It really is good to show that they don't think about it, you know? That evening, the two of them are having dinner and just enjoying their new home. And Eddie's sister, Margaret, comes over and she's got their mail. And bad news, he has been drafted. And he is pissed. And I don't blame him
yeah, they
because,
they sent him a letter saying you've been reclassified and you've been drafted. I would think the procedure would be you would get a letter saying you're being reclassified. You are now eligible for the draft. But hey, we're going to destroy your life completely. You didn't think you would ever have to go because you're, you know, is it 4F? And
4F.
and now you're going.
Yeah. And this is where I would cut off a foot or both of them because fuck that. We cut to Eddie, who's at Camp Walters for basic training. He writes to mommy and tells her that army life is not for him. Yeah, we knew that, Eddie. And he writes her all the time, like multiple times a day. He tells her he wants to go AWOL. He's angry that they took him away from her. He misses everything about her and their life together, and it really is sad. At basic, he and his group are getting shooed out by this bargain bin Arlie Emery guy. He's like, yeah, you guys are bottom of the barrel. The army doesn't really want you, but we're losing a lot of guys over there, so we need more bodies to put in front of guns. It's like Stripes, except this isn't funny.
Yeah.
In the showers, Eddie's telling a couple of other guys that if he'd only broken parole just once, this wouldn't have happened to him. So the recruits are practicing with their rifles, and Eddie writes that he's not very good at it and hates the way that it recoils and hits him in the face, and it's really sad. He doesn't belong there.
Can I say
It's
something
yeah.
parenthetically? We, at least my generation, we were raised thinking that, because we all we had was propaganda that we saw like in cartoons and stuff like that, that John Wayne movies that, boy, once World War II started, every man said, I'm going. And I had a teacher, a German teacher who was a veteran, who one day got off on a tangent and explained to us that it wasn't that way, that there was a lot of guys who were like, I don't want to go to war, blah, 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 blah. I think it did a good job showing that these drafted men, there was a large percentage of them who did not want to be there. They
Hmm.
weren't like, oh my gosh, I'm fighting for my country or anything. They're like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to get shot at.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we can argue, but we're not going to, about, where's the balance between individuality and your duty to country and stuff like that. But, we all have different emotions, and there were plenty of people who did not want to be there. So, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, there's a Key and Peele bit where they are talking and they're like, yeah, something happened between World War II and Vietnam where they realized they could just send us, black people, to the war. They were like, you want a drink of water? You go to the back of the building. You want to die for your country? Step right in front of me. That was a really good bit. Um, anyway, so the sergeant is like, you're gonna have to log more firing time. You're gonna be a marksman and you're going to the front. I'm sorry, that's the way it is. But he does kind of let him cheat because they are, I guess, very desperate for soldiers. I'm not a World War II expert. I don't know what was going on at the time. Um, I like Sheen's vocal performance when he's writing the letters because he does sound very young. He's very stilted when it's his narration of his letters. I think it's a really good character choice for him, showing that he's not really an educated guy. He's just
Yeah.
a normal blue collar guy. So he tries to get a discharge all throughout being in basic, but he needs like three signed affidavits, a Red Cross report, and he's like, "Mommy, can you get me out, please?" And she does try her best, but no dice. And the woman at the board is really awful. She's like, well, because she's telling him, I can't survive on the, what was it, $55 that Eddie gets a week that gets sent to me.
A month.
A month. God, that's worse. Yeah, a month.
Yeah.
No.
And she
And
was
she,
out of work too at this time for health reasons.
for health reasons, yeah. And the woman at the board is like, pay less rent. She's like, well, I'd have to move to do that. And she's like, yes, you should move in with your parents or your in-laws and sell your furniture or take a single room. It's like, damn, lady. God, she's just like, we all have to make our sacrifices. We all have to do our part. It's really cruel. Like don't just don't try to appeal to the humanity of the government. They have none to speak of. And then she gets upset and leaves, and the woman's like, are you all right? No, she's not all right. You just told her to give up everything in her life, basically. Antoinette talks to Eddie on the phone and tells him that it's not gonna work. He says that he wishes he were back in jail and that he'll be home on leave soon and feel a little better then. So he does get to go home for 12 days. They go to dinners, they go to the movies, they just stay in each other's company. He takes care of pigeons, and he says that this is a whole different group of pigeons than were here last time I was taking care of them. Um, then Antoinette narrates that the morning he left for Maryland, she never saw him again.
Yeah, and she also said during that narration that the 12 days he was home, they didn't really talk much. They just spent time together.
Hmm.
And yeah, I could see that. What is there to say that you haven't been saying in letters?
Yeah. She narrates that the military told her he died under dishonorable circumstances, but she didn't find out until 8 years later that they killed him. I'm like, if you're gonna do it, you need to own it, you know? But whatever. So Eddie gets shipped overseas and he meets a man named Jimmy Fedek, played by Gary Busey. At this point, Jimmy takes over the narration for a while. He says they were both Polish, so they bonded over that. He says that Eddie never seemed like someone who was yellow. He griped about being drafted, but so did a lot of guys. Eddie did tell him once that he was never going to fire his rifle. He says, "Why am I bothering cleaning this thing? I'm never going to use it." So they get sent to France to join G Company, and they were really in it. They're driving through a war torn area. Everything is burnt and broken, and they pass injured and presumably now homeless civilians. It's really awful. And that night they start taking heavy fire. Eddie freezes up and only moves at Jimmy's urging. Their platoon unit, I don't know the difference between these terms. They get split up. Jimmy and Eddie run for their lives and they take cover in a cave. Jimmy says that they never did meet up with G Company. They spent the night hiding from the shelling, and he says it must have really gotten to Eddie that once under fire was enough. The rest of the company moved off and kind of left them behind. I guess they figured they're dead or captured. So Jimmy and Eddie, the next morning, they're the only ones left. And he's like, I guess technically we're deserters now. But then some Canadian soldiers turn up and they say that they kind of adopt them until they can be um, returned to their own group. They were with the Canadians for 45 days and had things pretty cushy, all things considered. They were doing KP duty for them, looking for food, hanging up signs. They were not in active battle. And they traveled all over. They did keep sending message to their 109th company so that they weren't considered AWOL. They have no idea if anyone's getting these messages, but they keep sending them all the same. Eddie tells Jimmy that he got rid of all his ammo. He's like, why? We could get pinned down or anything. He says, no, he's not going to shoot ever at all. And he's having a great time on KP duty. But unfortunately for them, the good times are over. They get in touch with their company and they have to go back. Jimmy's willing, Eddie is not. They report to G Company and they meet the captain and he's sending them straight to the front. And Eddie very haltingly tells him that he can't do it. He's too scared to be in a rifle company and he wants to be kept in the rear area. That's what she said. Sorry. The captain is like, and I'll give them this. A lot of people give him several chances to walk this back. The captain says, "You go now, and I'll forget that this happened." And Eddie's like, "No, I'm not going. I'm too nervous." And he's sort of understanding. He's like, "Listen, we're all scared. None of us wants to do this, but we have to. I can't go making exceptions for people." Which I do understand, but Eddie flat out tells him, "No, if you make me go, I will run away." Now the guy's starting to get pissed off. And Eddie's like, if I leave right now, will I be arrested for desertion? He's like, yeah, you will. He said, that's what I'm going to have to do. He puts down his rifle and walks away. Jimmy tries to get him to stop, but he's made up his mind. He walks out, and Jimmy narrates that that's the last time he ever saw him. He ended up getting wounded and was in a hospital for a year. It wasn't until years later that he found out what happened to Eddie, and he said it made him feel sick. So, for some reason, they don't arrest Eddie right then and there. He walks up to a chow line, like out in the field somewhere, and he meets a man named Brockmeyer. He gives Brockmeyer a letter stating his intentions to desert. Brockmeyer is another one who's like, why don't you tear this up and go back to your unit? And Eddie's like, while he's eating, by the way, he's like, no, just go give it to an officer. He'll know what to do with it. Okay, so the letter finally makes its way to a lieutenant. He also gives him the chance to rip up the letter and return to his outfit. No. So finally, he arrests him and sends him to a stockade, which is a barn somewhere. It's a bunch of guys hanging out in a barn. Another prisoner narrates for a little bit, saying that Slovic was just another kid wanting a court martial so he can stay off of the front line. And they're really seem to be having a good time. A prisoner comes back from his trial and says he got 20 years, but he'll get out in 6 months after the war's over. They're not taking any of this seriously. The narration says that even after Eddie got his sentence, it never occurred to him that he'd really be shot. Eddie writes to Antoinette that he's in a little bit of trouble, but not to worry, and he begs her to wait for him. Our next narrator is Colonel Leacock. He has Eddie brought to him so they can talk face to face, since this is an unusual case, because it's not like Eddie ran away. He just told them he was going to. So he says part of his job is to help Eddie. They don't like court-martialing people, and he offers Eddie yet another chance to go back to the front in a different outfit so he can start fresh. Nobody has to know that he deserted. And he'll suspend any action against him if he goes back now. Eddie is still very confident when he says no, and at this point, I'm getting frustrated with him. Are you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Frustrated, but he's a simple person. He
yeah,
Kathy and I talked about this a little bit. He didn't really have the ability to think about the negatives that could happen. You know, he was he, in his mind, I will serve time and then I'll go home and be with my wife and resume my life. And that's he was so narrow focused on that he didn't see that there were other possibilities because most people that think when you have something like that going on, you kind of weigh if I do this, this is what can happen. If I do this, worst case scenario, which is what I like to do. What's the worst case scenario?
me too. Yeah,
This could happen. Um, but in his defense, even if he did that, nobody expected an execution. They haven't had one since the Civil War, and that was like
that's
something that
true.
was so far back in history that he probably didn't pop into anybody's mind.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I always go to worst case scenario too, which is why I was such a good teenager. So I never got in trouble. I'm like, what's the worst thing could happen? Me dead in a ditch. I won't be doing that. So Leacock narrates that he's had many boys like Eddie say the same thing. They want their court martial, and he even says, and why not? No American soldier has been shot for desertion since the Civil War. It makes sense. A military doctor narrates a bit that says that Eddie was declared sane and responsible for his actions. The court martial begins, and it's very short. It takes 100 whole minutes. The presiding judge says that um, neither he nor any of the other judges were combat men. And that's basically because all the combat men were currently under fire. And apparently, staff men were known to be more lenient. Now, do you think it's fair they're judging a guy not wanting to be shot at by a bunch of military guys who aren't being shot at?
That's not fair. No.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like more lenient. I feel like they'd be harder on him since they don't actually know what combat is. But whatever. And this confused me. Eddie pleads not guilty.
Well, I think that was his legal counsel said you need to plead not guilty. And so that
Okay,
that was the plea. I think that was under legal counsel that he did that.
okay. But it doesn't matter. He has a written
Yeah,
confession that's entered
yeah,
into evidence. So, yeah, just I don't know what we're doing here. Eddie chooses to remain silent during his trial, so he's found guilty. A secret ballot is taken, and the death sentence was unanimous. The presiding judge says that why don't we stretch our legs and take another vote? It's unanimous again. He tells them that they're all going to have to live with this for the rest of their lives. Let's vote a third time. Guess what you think happens? But presumably he's voting for death too, so why is he telling the rest of them, really think about this as I vote for death again? He could stop this, but
yeah.
he doesn't. Um, so Eddie stands up, all ready for his prison sentence, and he doesn't really react when they say you've been sentenced to death. The judge said that even the court didn't really believe that they would shoot him. They thought the sentence would be cut down, and a few years after the war, he'd be sent free. That's what happened to most deserters during this time. Then Eddie writes a letter to Eisenhower pleading his case. We see this decision go kind of up the chain of command. He's not granted clemency, and all the necessary officers approve, some because of his previous criminal record. The commander that we saw earlier narrates that if he let Slovic get away with it, he didn't now know how he could go to the front and look a good soldier in the face. What did you think about that?
I get that.
Yeah,
I,
I do
I
too.
when you're a commander and word would get out that you allowed a guy to desert without proper punishment, that would diminish some of the respect they would have for you.
Yeah, I understood that. Um, Eddie ends his letter to Eisenhower saying he'd like to remain a good soldier and that he's sorry. Oh, Eddie. And now we are back at the present. Eddie arrives at the prison. He's taken up to meet Major Fellman and Chaplain Stafford. And then there's this weird, awkward, would be funny under different circumstances bit where they go to take Eddie's cuffs off him, but the MPs left the keys back at the stockade. So they have to saw the cuffs off. And the major even apologizes to Eddie for it, and he says that's okay. He's very nice in this whole thing. He does want to talk to Stafford. He asks if he'll hear his confession and if he could go to mass and have communion. Stafford agrees to all this, and he asks how much time he has. He's got about 2 hours. Stafford gives Eddie all the letters from Antoinette, and he's obviously very emotional reading those. He tells Stafford that she was the only break he ever got in his life, but they just wouldn't leave them alone, let them be happy. Stafford encourages him to think about her, to give him courage. I'm not sure how that works, but okay. I would be trying not to think about her personally. He Stafford asks him to go out and die with courage, and Eddie asks if he'll be with him, and he promises that he will be with him every step of the way. And Eddie supposes that he's getting a break. He knows when he's gonna die. On the line, you never know when it's coming, and that's the thing he couldn't stand. Personally, I would rather not know than sit there and wait for it. That's just me. Sheen and Beatty do some really, really good work in this scene. It's really emotional.
I think Ned Beatty did a great job. The first scene he's in when he's talking with all the people who are going to be firing on the firing squad,
Hmm.
he's very much it's business, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
There wasn't emotion from him. He was almost like, yeah, that's what we do. We're soldiers. We take orders. It's what happens. But once he meets Eddie, and he is confronted by this isn't a combative guy. This isn't an angry guy. There is a childlike innocence about him
Hmm.
that almost. he got stuck in a circumstance that he wasn't mature enough to handle. Because if, like, I was in that situation, and this is one of the things about thinking forward, I would have been thinking the first time they said I'll rip out this out, I would have thought, yeah, I better go to the front line because I've got a wife, and if I could really mess up her life, I going to jail. Probably wasn't thinking about execution, but going to a military prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. But once uh, the priest, Ned Beatty's character, starts talking to him and starts saying that this is a decent guy. There's an innocence about him that the circumstances got above his head that he didn't have the ability to think through. So I really thought Ned Beatty did a great acting job transitioning from the military chaplain to I'm here to be a minister to this guy,
Yeah.
and I like him.
Hmm.
Probably didn't want to like him. It's
Oh
easier
yeah.
when you don't like, but he really liked him, and everybody who met Eddie liked him.
Yeah. Yeah. Even Jimmy, like he walked away right in front of him, and Jimmy had to go back, and even Jimmy was like, I liked the guy. It made me sick that they did that to him, you know?
Yeah,
So Eddie asks him what the guys on the firing squad are like, and Stafford says they're under orders, but they would rather be somewhere else this morning. And Eddie says to tell them he doesn't hold it against them, and to tell the guys that he knew in his regiment that he wasn't a coward, at least not today. And while the firing squad arrives, Stafford hears Eddie's confession and absolves him. I'm not Catholic. He gives him a rosary and he performs a mass, gives him communion. I mean, we only took communion every so often. I don't know if there was any rhyme or reason to it, but um, just two of the firing squad are chatting, and one says, if you have the blank, you'll know it. It's not really going to help because there won't be any recoil. If they fire a live round, you'll know that you did it. So if that's true, what's the point of giving them blanks in the first place?
yeah,
But I don't know if that's true. I didn't look into it. The high-ranking officers and the firing squad are all kind of standing around with their coffee and their greetings, and it's really dark. I mean, I guess you don't know how to act because, again, like you said, they haven't executed someone for desertion in so long. Um, so two MPs go up, they tie Eddie's hands behind his back, and Eddie says they're not shooting me for desertion, but because they need to make an example. And since I'm an ex-con, they're going to shoot me. And I mean, he's not wrong, really. He asked for his rosary. They put the rosary in his hands before they start walking him out. And one of the MPs even gets a blanket and puts it around his shoulders because it's so cold outside. It's so weird. Stafford and Eddie start praying the Ave Maria prayer over and over and over again, all the way out to face the firing squad. And the actor playing Fellman has a really good moment where his voice falters a little bit just when he says, "Prepare the prisoner for execution." They get to the post, and Stafford, and this really happened. Stafford leans into Eddie and says, "When you get to heaven, say a little prayer for me." And Eddie
that's when I
says,
cried.
I know. Eddie says he will. He'll pray that he doesn't follow him soon. And yeah, and then I wrote, and then I teared up. Um, and again, Sheen does some really good acting here. He keeps repeating the prayer with Stafford over and over again, and near the end, his resolve cracks and his voice starts getting a little more hysterical, but he keeps praying. It's really good. He's tied to the post. The hood is placed over his head. They keep praying. The squad is brought out. Feldman gives the order. They fire. Eddie groans and moves a little bit. A doctor goes to check his vitals. He says that He's barely alive, and they're like, well, should we reload? He says the squad did a lousy job. Not one of them hit the heart.
Yeah.
And he's like, by the time you reload, he'll probably be dead. He orders them to reload anyway, and Stafford shouts, sure, shoot him again if you enjoy it so much. And the doctor's like, look, take it easy. No one is enjoying this. Fellman tells the doctor, you either pronounce him dead or step aside. And then the rosary drops from Eddie's fingers, and the doctor says he's dead. Fellman announces the sentence has been carried out, and everyone is dismissed. Stafford performs last rites while the body's being cut down, and one of the guys says, if he was a coward, he sure didn't show it. And he says, Eddie Slovic was the bravest man here today. They carry his body off, and the credits roll with no music. It's just the sound of the footsteps in the snow. The end. One note, Slovic was buried there in France. They did not ship him home to his family. Antoinette tried to get him home until she passed away in 1979. It wasn't until the it wasn't until the 1980s when Reagan was persuaded to have his remains brought back to America. Presumably, he said, well, I'm really busy not doing anything about AIDS, so I guess I can fit that into my schedule. So he was brought home eventually. And that's the end. That's the end of the story.
I'll tell you what I liked so much about this movie. It wasn't preachy.
Mm-hmm.
It lets you have the dignity of making your own decision, whether or not his moral decision was right, whether or not he should have been executed. Um, there wasn't a big speech by some random character talk about, how terrible the military is. It wasn't preachy. And that's one of the things I don't like about a lot of modern movies is if they have a case they're going to bring, they get preachy about it. And I give the audience some dignity. Let us figure out the message on our own. And I liked the message was loud and clear without being preachy. The message was loud and clear that this was a man who really did not belong in the military. Not everybody belongs in the military. I told Kathy while we were watching this, I knew at a young age, I'm not cut out for military. I'd watch a movie, or TV show or something, even Hogan's Heroes. I'm like, that's not for me. Um, so I really liked that the movie wasn't preachy, and I think it's much more effective that way. This really happened. This is a part of history. Let's learn from it. Learn from history. We don't do a whole lot of that these days, do we?
No.
But anyway, as someone who's got a history degree, that uh, history is the greatest teacher. You look back and you see how things were carried out, and then you say, "Hey, we need to do better in these kinds of situations." And I thought that the movie did a great job with that. And I don't think there's been an execution for desertion since then. I think it's, you know, you're court-martialed and sent to military prison now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think the draft, and I know that we don't draft people anymore, knock on wood. I think that's a horrible thing. It it's not right, I don't think, to say someone you need to go kill or die. I
yeah. Especially in today's world, it's so not necessary because someone ticks us off. We don't even have to leave our soil. We just send a drone over or whatever.
right.
It's
Um,
warfare for a country as advanced to us, really. Foot soldiers are almost a relic of the past.
yeah, I do. The one thing that holds me back is, look, I'm anti-war. War is bad. We should try, I think, try to avoid it at all costs. But this was World War II. If anyone needed to be stopped by any means necessary, it was the Nazis. you
Yeah.
know? So that's kind of hard. And I understand this was near the end of the war, and clearly they were desperate for soldiers, but it's just, I don't know, it's tough. I think the draft is wrong. I think executing Eddie was wrong, but I also kind of understand, you know? I
Yeah,
don't know if that makes sense or if I'm too
it makes
wishy-washy about it.
sense. I just think if you're going to have a draft, um, you should take into account someone's makeup because you can't force a square peg into a round hole. If you don't have it and you've went through boot camp and it's not clicked to you that you are now supposed to go kill people and you just can't, then I I don't know. I was very sympathetic for him,
Yes.
basically because that was his argument. It wasn't I'm against this war, this is wrong. I don't care what happens with Hitler or whatever, you know. It was as a human being, I can't do combat. I can't do it. Um, and it reminded me of Saving Private Ryan, where you had the one guy, I think he was a radio operator, who in that scene in the tower, when they needed his help, because they needed all the, he couldn't do it. He
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then finally at the end, he kills the one German, you know. So,
Hey.
yeah, everybody else, yeah. But I do get that because I thought, if I was under fire, boy, I would probably freeze up. I would like to think I would be a little more, I don't know if the word's brave or whatever, but I think that I would have a hard time shooting another human being.
Yeah, I don't think you really know how you're gonna react in extreme situations until you're there, but yeah, I think I would freeze too. I would probably be killed because I would be frozen, you know? I
Yeah,
couldn't do it. But that's what you were saying about the um it's exactly what the warden said at the very beginning. They're like, you could train Eddie all you want. I could have told you. You get him to that front line, he's gonna freeze or run. That's who he is, you know?
yeah. Another thing I this movie reminded me of, it reminded me of the scenario when I was a kid, and this is going to be a dumb example. I was about 10, 12 years old. Me and my friends, we were throwing water balloons at each other, and one of my friends had this stupid idea, hey, let's throw it at a car. And I knew it was a bad idea, but and there were other friends there who I'm sure, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's throw it at a car. And so we're all hiding, and I wasn't throwing the balloon, but I'm thinking, no one's really going to throw a balloon at a car. No, I mean, we're all going to chicken out, you know. But the peer pressure was there that when a car went by, a couple threw water balloons, hit the car stopped, guy got out of the car to come and find us, and we started to run away. And there was a guy who saw the whole thing. A guy who was about 6'4", probably about 30 years old, and just imposing. He saw the whole thing and he came and he rounded us all and we made us all go to this driver. And, you know, and the driver's like, what'd you do? What'd you throw a rock in my car? No, it was a water balloon, you know. And I knew at that time nobody wanted to do this, but the idea was put out there. And with the peer pressure, we didn't know how to stop it. It was almost like it's inevitable. This is going to happen now, and it's going to be something that's going to end bad. I mean, didn't end that bad, but you know, in our little 10-year-old minds, it was really bad. This giant monster's running us out of there. Go meet the driver. Like, he's going to kill us. But that was kind of like, you know, I they did not really think the execution was going to go through. Even the during the trial, they all voted for death, but they said, it's not going to go through. And it was like, somebody stop it. And it finally got to Eisenhower, and he said, yeah, execute him. And okay, I guess we have to execute him. So I,
Yeah, no wonder he didn't want the book to come out.
yeah, because everybody who met him and interacted with Eddie, they could see there was, like I said, there was an innocence about him that I don't know if he deserved to die. I just think bad circumstances. He should have never been drafted, and he just wasn't cut out to be on the front line.
No, I don't think he deserved to die for that at all. But yeah, I first saw that last year and it really stuck with me, that movie, so I knew I'd have to put it on the list at some point.
Okay, do you think that I saw this at the first airing? If I saw a repeat of this, or if this is the first time I saw the execution of Private Slovic?
First time.
It is the first time, but I did have it on my list because I'd read about it and I thought I want to do this one. So, uh, yeah, it was the first time I saw it. I did not see it. I didn't even know it existed until we decided to do this, and I started researching made for TV movies. Oh, this one sounds really interesting, so I had that on my list. Do you give it a classic or a trash it?
I give it a classic. This was extremely well done.
This was a great movie,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a podcast about made for TV movies because they they're a product of a bygone era. They're not Lifetime movies. Some of them are pure fluff, which is okay.
Yeah.
We've done a few of those, The Last Dinosaur, but some of them are really biting, like Bill last week, like the execution of Private Slovic this week.
Hmm.
Um, and they used to get away with being more edgy on TV than they are today, I guess you could say. It's everything's about ratings and everything else. And it's like, you know, you have
I
if
mean, network TV is barely a thing anymore.
yeah, you have a movie come out and it's they're all trying to be blockbusters. Small movies that just have a good message tend to just go straight to video or to art houses.
Hmm.
They're not really pushed. And
Yeah,
um, I really like this movie. I really did. I give it a strong classic, and I think it's probably one of the best we will see as far as made for TV movies.
probably. Yeah.
Now, I didn't get a chance to tell you this before we got on because um, this movie is almost 2 hours without the commercials. I mean, this is a long TV movie.
Yeah, my bad. I forgot it was that long before I suggested it.
So I've been busy doing stuff, and it was about, I don't know, 3:45. I told Kathy, I said, "Do you want to watch the movie with me?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh my gosh, this is 2 hours long." It got over at 10 till, and I rushed down here, got everything together. But next week, we won't record because with the Halloween, Thanksgiving weekend, we're going to have company over, and it's just going to be a little too busy for me to prepare. So we'll skip next week. But in 2 weeks, we've got another classic.
Oh God, what is it?
We have Dawn, Portrait of a Teenage Runaway.
Okay, I have not seen this, but I've heard many things.
Okay. Wonderfully acted by that multi Academy Award winner, Eve Plum from the Brady Bunch.
George Glass.
That Eve Plum. So, yes, we're going to watch Dawn, Portrait of a Teenage Runaway. And then later we'll watch Alexander, The Other Side of Dawn, which is part two of this, or two parts to this. So
I see. Okay.
it's like one day we will do Bill on his own. We will one day pick up Alexander, The Other Side of Dawn. But for now, it's just Dawn, Portrait of a Teenage Runaway.
Sounds good.
And it has nothing to do with the group, The Runaways. Joan Jett, Sherry Curry, and Lita Ford, all them. Nothing to do with that. Did you ever see that movie, The Runaways? The
I
one
sure
with
did.
that was really good,
Yeah.
but nobody else saw it but me and you. So
No,
apparently,
Natalie showed it to me. She's a huge Kristen Stewart fan.
yeah, it was just kind of in and out real quick. Yeah, was it Dakota Fanning was in it
Yeah.
too?
hmm
Yeah, yeah. And the reason I liked it is because I actually listened to the Runaways as a kid. Probably shouldn't have. Their songs are really for teenage girls. Yeah, this looking back, there's some sick stuff going on here, So gross. All right. Well, anyway, well, everybody, you have a happy Thanksgiving. Tabitha, you have a happy Thanksgiving, but I know you won't because you got to come to our house. So
Bummer.
bring those plates, okay? Bring those plates. So,
I will bring plates.
all right, everybody, we'll see you in 2 weeks.